As always, there is a folder out there on the P drive with today's date on it. All right, and if you do go out to that folder, what you're going to find in there, just this is an FYI for you, okay? What you're going to find in there, thought I had it open, but I'll open it now, that's fine. This is Dytel's version of a tip calculator. It works, all right? This is the code that I put in. And I also found out that on mine, all right, at least one of the problems I had on mine, just so you see this. These are the names that you were supposed to use over here. And this one right here, I called that something I shouldn't have called it. But that shouldn't have mattered because it's a text view. And I don't think there's any code that's going into that particular one. Now, I could be wrong. But either way, I changed it so it's exactly like what's in the book. Exactly. And it still doesn't like it. So mine blows up. But the one that's in today's folder, that one does work. All right. What he did that I didn't do, or what I did that he didn't do, I really and truly don't know. All right. The other thing, John, I found this interesting, but again, that's just me, is I just went and started up so I came in and did all the good stuff. And launched the emulator, etc. And I never had this before. This is a new one. The thing sat there for 15 minutes. Then it came up and it told me that the emulator arm.exe file couldn't load, even though the emulator was up and running when it said that, and you could see the emulator. And it shut itself down. I'm getting this thing again. So no space. Oh, that's on me because I've got all sorts of stuff that's. Close that. I need him to double the size of what I have on the, the stuff that I have rather on the, right now, if you notice here, I've got a lot of stuff in this folder, and that's what's keeping it from working. Now I'll try to paste it into my H drive, and it'll probably tell me I don't have room in there either. There you go. So I'll tell you what, I'm not even going to run it. Let's just look at the code. All right, we'll leave it like that. So I brought the code up here, and I brought it up inside of Notepad++. What I did, his file is about 150 lines approximately long. Notice that I put about 100 lines of comments in that he didn't have. All right, and I put this in so that you can, if you ever want to take the opportunity to go back and look at it, you can do so. All right. So he put some comments in here, and I changed them up and etc. But he doesn't have many comments. Most of the stuff that I put in here, I put in. He didn't put that stuff in. All right. So package name, the one Java file that we're putting in, and notice it's with number formatting, as it says. It's used for locale specific currency formatting. Then there's a bunch of Android packages that we're importing here, and you can read these and see what they're used for. I don't know why he did it like this, but I know there's a lot of stuff under Android.txt and under Android.widget, but I believe you could have just also imported Android.txt.star and Android.widget.star, and that would have worked also. The problem is that would have brought a lot of stuff into your program that you really don't need. All right, so you get some bloat that way. Okay, so jumping down into here. Main activity class for the tip calculator app. So if you look all the way down here, that's this. Public class main activity extends activity. Okay? As you can see right here, and again, I took these notes out of Dytel's book. As it says, unlike most Java apps, an Android app does not have a main method. All right. Rather, when you're working with Android apps, they're going to have one or more of these 4 different activities. We'll talk about virtually all of them next semester. Activities right now. All right. And there's activities, services, content providers, and broadcast receivers. The other ones, it doesn't even pay to talk about them right now. It really and truly doesn't. All right. When you've got an activity, when you look here, think about your phone more than your tablet, unless you use your tablet for phone, which some people do. All right. But think about it. You're sitting there and you're on your phone and you're doing something. I don't care what it is. All right, let's say you're playing a game. You've got some game that scales okay, and you're playing it on your phone. You're playing it on your phone, and your phone rings. Somebody's called you, and you go to pick it up. Well, then typically what's going to happen is the activity that you had is going to go from the visible stage to the pause stage. Does that make sense? All right, that game or whatever it is you might be doing, it stops. Okay. So again, that's what's going to happen is that's going to pause. Depending on how long it's paused, the system may decide, you know what, you're not coming back, so it may just stop the activity. Okay? You can manually stop activities, so you can program apps so that if certain things happen, literally they stop. The reason that I'm bringing this up, I'm not trying to waste your time, but think about a couple things that you have. A couple situations you have, especially with mobile phones, that you typically don't have with a machine like this one right here. That is low memory and low battery power. All right? And if you've got a game and you keep that game in a visible running state, not visible, but if you keep it in a running state and you're on the phone for 15, 20 minutes, a half an hour, you're draining the battery. Even if you're not playing the game, it's still those resources are up there ready to go. All right? So you can read this stuff yourselves. I'm not going to read it to you, but I explain the difference between the 3 states right there. Okay? All right. The other thing that's important too is when you pause an activity, and you'll see this in just a minute. So if you're working on that tip calculator program, let's say, all right, and your phone rings, and you're on the phone for a couple minutes, and you come back. Well, there's a pretty good chance either you're going to have to take that information that you wrote to the tip calculator program and write it someplace to memory so you can retrieve it, or else if it does come back up at all, everything might have been blanked out. Now for a tip calculator program, let's face it, that's not a big thing. If this is a mortgage app program and you're trying to look between different lenders for different rates or whatever, that might be really important. All right. The other thing that they'll talk about, we'll see it a little bit later in here, is that typically when an app is stopped, if the app is supposed to start up again and it doesn't start up within 5 seconds, we're going to see it in here a little bit. It's NFA or an NFR or something like that. It's a non-responsive error. And when it gets that, it'll typically just close the app, period. All right, you'll see that in just a bit. All right, so main activity, as it says, the main activity implements the functionality of the tip calculator. It calculates both the 15% tip and the custom percentage tip, adds those two together. So it adds up your bill plus the 15%, and that's your total 15. It adds up the bill plus your custom percent, and that's your custom total. Should make sense to everybody. All right? So the stuff that's in here, notice currency and percent formatters. All right? And basically that's going to allow us, it says here that we're working with currency and we're working with percentage. The reason that this one especially is important is if all you're working with are doubles, you don't want your bill to be $36.567,839 type of thing, where it's off to 6 decimal places, which is what it's going to do otherwise. All right. So we could have gone in too, and we could set up a format pattern like we did last semester. You can do that too, but we're letting it know that we're working with currency and we're working with percentage. All right. That's what we're doing right there. Then we've got our local variables here. Those should make sense to everybody. Okay. Nothing really new there, but these are new. So the stuff that you see here, those are the different text views that you've got on your screen. Does that make sense to everybody? So the stuff that's right there, these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 fields, those fields, and it's not letting me go back to graphical layout. When I tried to before, it told me I had an error in my layout, and I can't, for the life of me, figure out what the heck it is. So I couldn't go back. I don't know if it'll let me now or not. In fact, let's do this, because this is mine, and it's kind of broken. So, see that? I'm getting some kind of an error. So I'm going to do a File, Close All, and I'll open his up. Because his is real pretty. All right. His code you'll probably want to, yeah. So again, this is what it should look like, right? Okay, and when we look on here, thought there was a way that I can take this and bump up the size. What he's talking about there are the fields here, 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 and here. Does that all make sense? All right. So that's the stuff that he's talking about in here. Okay. So, again, notice the first thing that gets called automatically is the onCreate method. And I'm going to go over all these comments in just a second, but notice on the onCreate method, whenever you have to create the app, it gets called. You may say, well, that makes sense. It's called onCreate. Yes. All right, but I want you to keep that in mind, because notice it's called when the activity is first created. It's auto-generated when the app is created. So that is one that's already in there for you, and this is the only line really that's, maybe there's 2 lines in it. That line, don't remove that. That's saying call the parents onCreate method. Even if it does nothing, if you remove that line, so you're not calling the parent, you're going to get a terminal error message. So anything that's super in here, you've got to keep it in. All right. So, as it says, each activity life cycle that it's overridden must call the superclass's version, that's what I just mentioned, or an exception occurs. All right. As the GUI is built, the IDE generates a class named R. We talked about this in an earlier class. Again, if you look in here under this gen folder, there's r.java. This gets created for you automatically by the system as you're doing this stuff. And there's a whole bunch of stuff that's in there. You go, what the heck is all that? It doesn't matter. That's the stuff that's kind of intermediate. It's when you go and you drag the stuff out, it creates this. And then when you go and you actually run the program, it compiles that back into Java. So this is the R stuff. You should never, ever touch anything that's in here. Don't remove it. Don't say, oh, that should have been a 3 or whatever. Don't do that. That'll ruin the whole program. I've done it. All right? So you should never have to jack with that file is what I'm saying, but I want you to know at least that it exists. All right. So it says that the R file, it says it represents each type of resource that's in the project's res folder. So let's quickly look at that. That's the folder that's right here. All right, let's close all this stuff up. And you'll notice you've got a bunch of drawable stuff in here. That's where you put all your images. And you'll notice that there's high density pixel, low density pixel, medium density, extra high, and extra high. And it depends on the type of device that you're working on. The size of the thing that's in there is going to change. Notice if I go to the extra high, there's the size of it. All right, this is Dytel's. All right, but so there's the size of it. Now, if I go from there to just the low, there's nothing even in there. So the only thing that he put in there was something in his extra high. All right. There's also ID, as it says. It holds constants for all the views. There's the layout. That's where you've got that activity _ main.xml file that we've been dragging stuff out to, etc. And your string class. We created a bunch of string constants. All right, so everything that they're showing you that's inside of res, right there, everything that's in there, and you notice that's most It's a bunch of the stuff that's in the program. All that stuff. All right. That's what they're talking about, the stuff that's in the res folder. All right. So it says the call to set content view uses the R layout activity main to indicate which XML file, not represents the GUI's main activity. In English, what that means is right here, this says, okay, that file that's under the R folder, that's under the layout folder, that's called activity main, that's where you've defined the GUI. Okay? So when you set the content view, that's referred to as inflating the GUI. What it's doing, just so you know this. All right, when we dragged all that stuff in there, we did all that stuff as a class. All right, what it did was it created this. And if you go, it doesn't look really like Java. It's because it's not. It's XML. When you inflate the GUI, you turn that XML into Java code. Did you hear what I said? You don't have to do it. All right, you could literally program all this stuff in Java, but it would be a lot more work than dragging stuff out there yourself and then just inflating the GUI like they're talking about. But you could do it that way. All right. So as it says, once the GUI has been inflated, then notice what we're doing right here. So for example, this says our local variable that's called amount display text view, set it equal to whatever is in the current text view. So we're copying what's in those text views into local variables. Why? Because we can't sit there and perform math and other operations on them when they're here. Does that make sense? Okay. So then it says update the GUI based on the bill amount and the custom percent total. So now that we've got all that information, now we want to update the standard, which is our 15%, and our custom, which is whatever we set the seek bar for. Okay? In order to be able to do that, notice what we have to do here. Set the amount edit text watcher. All right? So edit amount edit text equals boom, 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 boom. What that is right there, that amount edit, that's what we're entering the value into. So if your bill was $36.12, that's the one that's going to hold the 36.12 that they're talking about right there. When we do this, notice call add text change listener to register the text change listener that will respond to events. What? Very similar to what we did earlier this semester for buttons. Remember when we did buttons and you had the action listener and you had to register that? We're doing the same thing here. All right. So what we're doing for the amount data text is we're adding a listener. And we're going to have to write code that's going to handle that, and you'll see that in just a couple minutes. Then for the seek bar, again, this is GUI. We haven't been doing it like this before. All right. So we say seek bar, custom seek bar equals, well, now we're having a local variable called custom seek bar that we can use to hold the value that that seek bar is pointing to. All right. And then whenever it changes, we want to update that value. Okay. So in other words, every time we move this thing, we click on that, we move it any place. Well, I guess you'd have to run it. But anytime we move that thing any place, all right, then the variable that's right here, that's going to hold its current value, that variable. Okay? All right. This should be one of the easiest methods right here. Update standard. 15% tip is your bill amount times 15%. That's just the tip. So again, if your bill was $50, that's going to be at $50 times 0.15. That means that'll be $7.50. Should make sense. Then the 15% bill will be our bill, which was $50, plus the tip we just did, which was $7.50. So $57.50 is what we'll throw in here. Does that make sense? All right. Then all we're doing is we're saying after you figure it out, now throw those values back into, take those two and throw those back into here. There's our total, all right, and there's our tip values. Does that make sense? All right, and I think this one right here is just setting the 15% and the total 15. So that's these two right there. What he calls just the 15. Standard, whatever. That's the custom one because that's the one that's going to handle seek bar this right here. All right. So we do almost the same thing with update standard, except what we're changing now is that instead of changing the 15% one, we're changing the custom one. And since that custom one is going to involve using that, it is going to involve us using the seek bar, that's why we need that line of code in there. All right. And then we do the same exact thing. So the custom tip, let's say it was set to 20%, is our bill amount, which we said was $50 times 20%, so that's going to be $10 right there. Then we want to add our $50 plus our $10 tip, and that 60 is going to go right there. Okay? So we're doing almost the same thing. Then these two lines that you see right here in lines 182 and 183, those are putting the value here and the value here. There is absolutely no reason that this had to have been done as two different routines, other than it makes a heck of a lot of sense to do them as two different routines. One is 15%, it's always going to be a constant value. The other one is the seek bar, so it could change every time you run the program. All right. Again, I gave you some stuff in here. Boy, I guess I don't spell much. But when you take a look in here, again, I tried to put in at least a few places in here. I put in some stuff for some URLs if you want to find out more about this stuff. All right. Then we have to come through and we have to write the listener method. On seek bar change listeners. This is going to be called any time we drag that seek bar. Okay? And it contains a few different methods. Since we are implementing, all right, since we're coming through here and we're writing this as an inner class, we have to say not only the on progress changed, which is where we put the code, but we also have to put in the on start tracking touch and the on stop tracking touch, even though we're not putting any code in there. All right, we have to put them in there anyway. And we went over this same stuff with mouse listeners and button listeners, etc. So we've talked about this before. We're just using other components for it. That's all. All right. So the on progress changed. There's our seek bar. All right. This is basically what it's moved to. Okay. And I don't remember what from user is, so I'm not going to lie to you. All right. So the custom percent equals whatever our progress was. So let's say we moved it. Remember, it goes up to 30%, right? So let's say we moved it to 28%. So it's now 28 divided by 100.0, which will give us 0.28. Which is 28%. All right. And then we update our custom again that we already looked at up here. Again, we have to put these in because they go along for the ride. Again, Java requires that a programmer override every method in an interface that has been implemented. Thus the empty methods for on start track touch and on stop track touch. All right. Then we've got our text watcher method. And before we go through that, notice that after we do this, we've got our on text changed. Then afterwards, we've got two more of these. I didn't put the same comment in there because it would have said exactly the same thing, except up here where we said Java requires, it says that's the empty methods for the, I would have changed this and this to be this and this. And I thought you're all smart enough, and this is already long enough anyway. I cut some comments out. It was over 300 lines. All right, but I cut a bunch of stuff out because I thought it was redundant. So what's left then, as it says, this responds to the event of the amount edit text box. That's the amount that's the text box that we're, or edit text. That's where we're entering our value using the numeric keypad. All right. So when we change it here, this is done as a safety. Ideally, if you set your thing up, if you remember, because just about all of you, not all of you, but just about all of you are in the iOS class too. But if you remember what we did in there yesterday, we went in and where you had what you could put in your keyboard, we put in 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Remember that? We can't do that here, so we're putting code in instead. We're saying attempt to do this, but if for some reason the user puts in a goofy number, like let's say that, because you've got the decimal place there or whatever, so let's say that somehow you could put in 2 decimal places. So you put 123.45.56. That wouldn't work when you did this. It would break the program. So we put it in a try block just in case anything that's not considered to be a decent numeric is put in there. All right? And if that happens, we're just setting the amount to 0. So if an exception occurs, that's maybe a cheesy way out. That's what Dytel does. And basically, you screwed up, so it's like 0, oh, I better do it again, which is what you'd want them to do anyway, because they screwed up somehow. All right? And after they've done that, then we're going to display the amount. So that line that's right there in 245 is going to make sure that line is correct right here. All right? Then we update the standard, and we update the custom. So we call update standard just here. We call update custom here if we change the value manually, or we also call it here because we move the seek bar. All right? And hopefully that made sense to you. And that's it. So yeah, the question got asked, the code that I gave you, this code right here, somehow it's got some kind of an error in it. I don't know what the error is. So what you can do, if you've finished everything else and you want to, you don't have to turn this in anyway. All right? But what you can do is, this is in the folder with today's date on it, I've got Dytel's code, which is right here. You should be able to grab all of that except the package statement, so everything underneath it, be able to drag down, highlight all of it. You don't need his disclaimer and stuff in there either, I suppose, unless you really want to put that in there. All right, and copy all that to the clipboard and then paste that into your main activity.java, then it should run. If it doesn't and you get the error I had, then I'd say, again, the problem that I had, as I mentioned, was my names in here were not the same as the names on the PDF that I gave you. All right, I had a name here that was incorrect. All right, and if you say, well, I did that and I still get an error, then just literally remember what you can do. All right, that if you get frustrated, you go, you know what? I just like to see this darn thing work, even if it isn't mine. Then you go in and you do a file. You go to import Android existing code into workspace. You go here and literally you browse over. You browse over to you have wherever computer is. You go to computer. You'll go to the P drive. You know this drill by now. You'll go down to the CIS folder, or we can go to the German folder. I don't know what's in there. We can go to the CIS folder and then go down and find 152, 145. All right, Java 2, and in there you would go down and keep going down until you found, let's see, so in here there should be fall 2014, and underneath there is in class, and underneath there is the folder with today's date on it, 12/4, and underneath that is tip calculator. And if you don't have a tip calculator, you could do that right now if you wanted to. All right, so I already brought his in. That's why I'm not going to do it. In fact, I can. It doesn't matter. So I just write here. Let me cancel, and I'll go do the whole thing, and then we'll put the period to rest. So I'm going to do a file, close all. No, I don't want to change anything. I'm going to remove his. So I'm going to right mouse click and choose delete, and I want to delete the contents from the disk. I don't want them there at all. So I'm going to click OK. Now Dytel's version is gone. See that it's gone from there. So I can go in now and do a file, import, Android, existing code, browse, exactly what you just saw me do, computer, P drive, CIS, 152, 145, fall 2014, in class, 12/4, tip calculator, click OK, and please look at this. Make sure that it says, where it says copy projects into workspace, make sure that's checked. Otherwise, you're trying to copy, literally move the file over instead of copy it. All right. It should say the same thing up here. If you go, well, it doesn't look at, well, I can drag back and make sure it does. Okay? And then click Finish. And within a matter of seconds, there's Tip Calculator. So there's his. You can do that. And that's the one I was showing you before. So if I go there, go down to Res, go down to Layout, Activity Main, there's his program sitting fat and happy. Plus, if I go up to Source, and I go there, that's his code. So you'll see if you look in here, like I said, he doesn't have nearly the comments that I do. It's about 140, 150 lines, something like that. I think if I put my mouse here, 157 lines before his disclaimer. All right? That's all that I'm going to do for today. I'm going to give you the rest of the period to do what you want to do to fix this up. What we will do next week. This is an FYI for you. What we will do next week. Now it takes that, John. Remember before it wouldn't take that? It's funny, I put the other one in for the other class, and now this one works. Life's funny. All right. What we will do next week on Tuesday and Thursday of next week, and I'll spend only an hour both times. But what I plan on doing on Tuesday is going out to the folder for next semester, and I'm going to jump up to the PowerPoints, and I'm going to go over his PowerPoints for chapters 1, 2, and 3. I'm going to go through all those in an hour. The stuff for chapter 1, I think I mentioned this to you before, it's a cell job. You should use Android because this. It's all stuff like that, so we'll breeze through that fairly quickly. The stuff in chapter 3 is the stuff we've been working on for the last 2 or 3 weeks. So what's going to be new is the stuff in chapter 2. So I'll probably spend half of that hour, so a half an hour, on the stuff in chapter 2. Then what we will do on Thursday, a week from today, the last day of class, is I'm going to go over, and hopefully as a class, we will build that welcome app. That's what's discussed in chapter 2. All right? And the reason that it's important, and I want you to understand that, is what that means is when we start in spring, we've already gone through these 3 chapters. Does that make sense to everyone? So we're going to start right on chapter 4. So notice 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's 6 chapters. Yeah. And if life's good, it isn't always good, but if it's good, we'll average 2 weeks per chapter. A week to go over a project, then a week for lab. A week for a project, a week for lab. Does that make sense? You probably won't get 6 assignments. You probably only get 2 or 3. So we might do it faster than that. But my hope, what I'd really like to do is by week 9 or week 10, be done with the book. And then say, okay, you have 1 more assignment. I want you to build your own app. I want you to build your own Android app. And we're going to have the same exact assignment in the iOS class. If you want to build 2 different apps, you can. If you want to build the same app and build it both in Android and iOS, that's fine too. It's probably going to be less work because you'll have all the logic done for one. You can move it over to the other one. All right. It's funny, on about every other Monday, my wife and I go to the Pizza Hut for lunch, and Bob Jager's always there because it's $5 lunch day. So he always comes over and talks to us. So she knows him now. But Bob says, you ever going to have that advanced? And I said, you know what, as far as I'm concerned, no. We're never going to have an advanced Android class. We're never going to have an advanced iOS class. Because every time I try, they just tell me no. So the way that I'm doing it is the way I'm doing it here. Half of the advanced Java class will now become an intro to Android. Half of the secure coding class will now become an intro to iOS. I have to work with what they give me. Do I like it? Not any more than you probably do. But that's the way it is. I went and I rewrote all the course descriptions. Some of you have heard this. For all the courses, they denied everything that I did. And all I did was rewrite the course descriptions. Oh, no, you weren't using the right action verbs. Okay, that's fine. If they want me to put up my hands, I'm not going to say Michael Brown. I'm not going down that road. But if they want me to throw my hands up in the air and say, I give up, fine, I give up. I don't care anymore. All right? They want to turn me into one of the other instructors they have at this institution who just doesn't give a damn. And it's succeeding. All right? So, like I said, we will be going over this stuff next week. Chapter 1, Chapter 2, and Chapter 3. In fact, what the hell? Let's just grab Chapter 1 right now because I think we can do this in 5 minutes. Yes. Is that his or yours? That might be why. I don't know. I mean, I'd have to see the code. I know with his it did. I ran his about 5 or 6 times. And every single time when I ran his, it came up right away. Yeah. Well, then it's possible that something that I had you do was wrong. Again, I would never do that on purpose, but it's possible. All right. So again, this is the book. The book that we'll be using, it's black, and it's Android How to Program, 2nd edition. All right. I'm not going to talk even a second about the history of Android. You go to, if you want to sell something for the Mac, you go to the Mac App Store. If you want to sell something here, there's Google Play Store. There are other ones too. Amazon's got a store, and there's other stores also. All right. And people, you might laugh at what I'm about to tell you, but don't be surprised if over the years this course changes, because guess who's really coming on and starting to get a market share in this? That would be Windows Phone. They're actually starting to get some numbers. And if they do, and if we roll with the times, it might be that eventually the Mac class or the iOS class becomes a Windows Phone class, or this one does, or we have to have a hybrid. I don't know. All right. They talk about the Android packages used in this book. If you never heard me say this before, then shame on me. But just in case we didn't talk about this before, don't go to Android.com for all your Android needs. Go to developer.android.com. There is an Android.com, but virtually everything you need is in here. All right, including videos and all sorts of stuff. Almost all the time when I'm giving you URLs and I put them in code and stuff, they're from here. All right. I'm not going to go through basic object-oriented or object technology concepts because, again, this is a class. This is an object. We've done that 3 or 4 times already. All right, you should be able to give that lecture. What I like in here, notice important or key software for Android development and important Android documentation. So they talk about stuff. What Dytel does, what you'll see when you get your books, what you'll see is there's for chapters 1, not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. He's got 8 apps in there. And what he does first is he tells you to load the app. He gives you the code. He says test drive it so you can see how it works. Then he discusses the new features and functionality that weren't in the last one. Then he builds it. I don't think we're going to sit there and build all 8 of those. There's just not going to be enough time to do that. All right? So we'll look at completed apps and we'll look at the code and look at what he did. All right? That's what I'm planning on doing. All right. So he starts by coming through here and gives you some URLs and some other stuff. You've seen that kind of stuff before. Okay? Some Android gestures. I'm still not good with this. All right, you know, yesterday I know Mark, or I think it was you who told me in the iOS class, oh, do your 2-finger swipe. I don't do my 2-finger swipe nearly as well as most other people do, and it's amazing because I watch my kids, and my daughter has got a Chromebook, she's got a tablet, she's got an iPhone, and she's got an iPad, and you're going, well, she's got way too much. You're right. But the point is I watch her go back and forth between devices, and it just clicks for her. That's the difference between a 24-year-old brain and a 58-year-old brain. All right? All right. Some popular... Have you all heard of this term? Do you know what the term web service means? Let's pretend, for example, that Mike goes into business, okay? And he's going to start his own realty company. And what he decides he's going to do for his realty company is he wrote this really cool app, but it's got like the world's ugliest interface on it. So what he does is he builds this really beautiful interface, and then all he does is he calls his other program. Does it make sense? That program is a web service. There literally is what's referred to now as an electronic yellow pages out there that says before you go and do something and you create your own whatever, go out there and see if somebody else has it. Sometimes they're free. Sometimes when they're free, there's a reason they're free. Okay? But sometimes they're free and they're pretty darn good products. And people just put them out there because it's becoming more of an open source community. The other thing, too, that works in this, if you've never heard this term before, have you ever heard the term mashup? So, for instance, if I was going to create, let's say that I was going to create a site that had the best restaurants. So you could pick a town and boom, it would give you the best restaurants. Would it kind of make sense that maybe at part of that site I would also have a link in there maybe to best hotels in that town? So I would combine things that sometimes would make sense and sometimes maybe even wouldn't make sense. All right? When you start to combine things together like that, those are mashups. Sometimes a mashup, you create both components. Sometimes you create one component and you call a web service for the other one. Sometimes they're both web services. All right? That's the Android history. There you go. And he goes through and he talks about the different things that Ice Cream Sandwich has, and Jelly Bean has, etc. And there's the stuff that's in KitKat now. All right? I will tell you, I said this the other day, I'm saying it out loud, it's being taped. I got a thing from our grant manager that there is some money available. I went out and priced them and was going online this morning. I'm going to ask. I don't think we'll get them in time for next semester, but we might. I'm asking for 10 Android devices. All right? 8-inch tablets. And the ones that I want, they're middle of the road. They're $200 a piece. All right? I'm asking for 10, so that's $2,000. And the cases, depending, I mean, if you buy them right now, they're $6. But if otherwise they're 25. I mean, that's to the school, that's a big enough difference. All right? But I'm hoping we have those sometime next semester. The earlier the better. Then what you'll be able to do is just hook your tablet up to your machine. All right? And you'll still use these machines for development, but then you can run them immediately and see what they look like on there. That's what we should be doing anyway. All right? I also did I'm putting in $99 for me to get the Apple Developer. So if I have to guess which one they'll deny, you can probably guess what that'll be. All right, here's some of the important Android app packages. Anything that starts with Android, okay? And notice we'll hit some of this stuff. There's database. There's a whole app in here in Chapter 8 that does an address book that saves the stuff for you. That's one of the ones we will go over. I think Chapter 4 is one on Twitter searches. We'll go over that too. Again, Android gestures, Android hardware controls. John has given some of this stuff. He found, I don't know if you created it or you found it, some really good keyboard shortcuts and stuff for the emulator. All right? All right, it's on the Android site. And if how many people here don't know what I'm talking about? Good, then you probably have given most people a copy of it. Good, that's good. Then we don't have to say anymore. All right. Eclipse, we don't have to talk about that. The Android Virtual Device Manager, I just want to punch the screen right now, okay? This is, again, what it's supposed to look like. This is all we had last semester. In fact, rather than looking like this last semester, you'd get like an orange circle right here. And your lock would be here. If you dragged it out and you put it on the edge of the circle, any place on the edge, boom, your program took off and it ran like that. Now, John has already gone through, and I'll say this. I appreciate all the help that he's given me in the class and outside of class. But he's gone through, and he's already mentioned a few things that possibly we don't even need on here that might be taking up some resources. So next week, Wednesday, when I meet with IT, if I can get that list, I'll go and I'll talk to Terry, and I'll see, hey, is it possible that this stuff could be rebuilt during the break? I still don't know. That's one of my things on my asking list. What Terry told me 2 weeks ago was the virtual desktops will not be available at all during the break because they're getting new hardware and they're putting some new software on there. They're moving your stuff over, but they're going to take the stuff down so they can move it over to other machines which are more powerful, so we shouldn't have glitches. Now, I don't know where that stands right now. As soon as I find out, I'll let you know. All right. I just showed you the import dialog, so there's nothing in there that we have to go through. Remember that if you do delete something, that there's that checkbox there that says delete from disk. If you don't check that, it still exists, but it just doesn't show in your Android window. All right, in your Explorer window. All right, here's some of the buttons that you have in here that are on the, I guess on the emulator itself when it runs. Okay, you'll see these more, and we'll work with this stuff more next semester. We'll do a little bit of work with menus, etc. All right, there's a lot of seek bars. One of the ones that's in here, there's a thing called Doodles. All right, and that's actually, they talk about that in chapter 1. It's kind of like an Etch-a-Sketch, where you can, but it's more free format than an Etch-a-Sketch. You can change line, do line thickness and color and whatever, and you can draw things with it. All right, and that's the example that they use for that Doodles. They end up drawing a flower, and then they do this. Okay, and then they make it rain. All right. Characteristics of great apps. We don't have to read this. The bottom line is this: what's the biggest characteristic of a great app? I'm asking you this. And don't even say easy to use. No. What's the biggest characteristic of a great app? He's got it. Because if no one wants it, it can be the best damn app in the world. And if no one wants it, who the hell cares? You said usability. He's saying basically niche ability. Find a niche. So I'll tell you something. I'm saying this, and I can be very well proven wrong. But my guess is if one of you does develop an app and you show that in the 163 class in spring, when we have people here, there's a chance that could get you hired. That said, I wouldn't sit there and say, hey, I made this app. What I did was I stole this game and I changed the colors around. That probably won't get you a job. But if you create something that you literally could, remember, 25 bucks to basically sign up for the App Store, and then you can put whatever you want in it, for as far as I know, forever. Not 99 bucks a year, 25 bucks once. So you would be cool would be if one of you developed something, put it out there on the App Store, and we're able to go out to the App Store and show these people when they're in here. All right? I don't have to do that because I'm not looking for a job from them, at least not yet. We'll see at the end of the next semester. All right? All right. But they give you 4 pages worth of it. But you're right, Mike. And you're all right. Yeah, it's got to be affordable. Yeah, it's got to be usable. But more than anything else, it's got to be something people want. So if you go out to the App Store, I said this before, if Mike goes out and says, yeah, Jeff, that was a good idea. In fact, I got this kind of cool idea for creating a realty program, a thing for mortgages. And if you go out to the App Store and you type in mortgage calculators and it comes back with like 8,000, probably you're going to have a hard time breaking into that market when you think about it. All right. One of the things that I said, and if any of you have an interest, let me know. I'll even be willing to work with you on this. I would love it if the school had an app that the first day that you come in here, they would have an app you could download to either your iPhone or your Android phone, and it would be a This You Are Right Here app, and we'd have the map of the school in it. You could put in, Stefan was going to do it. Yeah, Stefan's a marketing man now. So, yeah. He even said that he'd be willing to help somebody who wanted to work on that. But, I mean, isn't there a niche for that? And before you say, well, yeah, for Blackhawk, think about it. If you write it generically enough, you can put any kind of map in there, can't you? So there might even be something like that out there. Yeah, yeah. Yes. And some of that stuff does exist. All right, for instance, and I'm not sure about this, but one that just came to the top of my head. When you think about it, a place like, if I go out, let's say, to the Museum of Science and Industry that's in Chicago, it's a big place. I wouldn't be surprised if they have an app that when you go in there, it'll give you a map, and you're here, I'm here, and I want to get over to this display, and it tells you exactly how to get there. I mean, part of it is, if I hurt anybody's feelings by saying this, sorry, we're a bunch of lazy saps today. People don't even want to walk. It's like, well, where'd you park? Well, I parked, whatever. Well, you didn't want to walk. No, I don't want to walk. Right? And you say, well, yeah, Jeff, you park way up in the front. Yeah, that's true. All right, they give you some great places to go for documentation. Notice developer.android.com, developer.android.com, etc. There's a lot of these. Stack Overflow is always a great place to go. I was Googling it when I had problems this semester. Adrian was Googling it. Terry's been Googling it, etc. There are some forum groups out there. Be real leery about some of the stuff that's in here. All right. Same thing with Stack Overflow. Just the fact, again, you don't want to ask stuff that's really dumb, because people will tell you you're really dumb, and you shouldn't even be allowed to log into their site. I've seen that kind of stuff before. All right. There's tons of videos and stuff out there, etc. All right. A lot of that stuff. And that's it. So now we're through Chapter 1. So when we come in next time, we'll go through Chapter 2, which again is that welcome app, and we'll buzz through that. In fact, we'll do it out of order. We'll do Chapter 3 first, because that's the tip calculator. So we'll do that. Then we'll come back and we'll look at Chapter 2. If there's any time, we'll start to build Chapter 2 as a class. Okay? That's all I've got. And it's good because we have guests. All right? Okay. Well, the timing wasn't that great, I guess. But I will tell you, just Rachel was just